Retirement is often seen as a destination, but we believe it's an opportunity to pursue your passions, realize your dreams, and live a purposeful life. Great decisions, incredible lives. Retire with Intention podcast is about more than just money. It's about embracing the things that truly matter, the experiences, the relationships, and the impact you leave behind. Here is your host, John Creekmur.
Well, welcome back, everybody. John here, and thanks for sitting in again with us. We know a discussion here on great decisions, incredible lives, retire with intention. And the reality is, it's all about living a life of intention. And really excited, actually kind of nervous today. I have one of my dear friends on with me, Brian Gareau. I'll introduce you to Brian here in a second. So he's already been posting a lot of threats to me on stories that he's going to reveal to everyone today. So we'll see if he stays honorary or what he has to do. But Brian, am I okay to go ahead, or are you going to go ahead and just warn everyone now that you're just going to trash me under the bus, or what are you going to do?
I just want you to be anticipating.
Great.
I do appreciate, though, John, letting me come casual. I've got my Papa hat on. I just had the pleasure of having a picnic with 6 of the grandkids before they start school tomorrow. So beautiful day for that.
Phenomenal. So you have your Papa Bear hat on. That's quite a hat. Yeah. Actually, it's kind of scary. I mean, it's Papa Bear. That would indicate that you're a Bear fan also. And so I'm sure that aligns with your true heart's favorite, right?
Okay, so we're starting already. I am a diehard Packer fan. You know that very well.
Right.
We're not going to talk about the Cardinals, so we'll leave it that way.
Nice. So, Brian, so you had lunch with 6 grandchildren. How many grandchildren do you have?
I have 7. The 2-year-old was in daycare. It was nap time.
Yeah, and so nap time and never wake a sleeping child. That seems to be a good rule of thumb to follow.
It's a very good one. As you continue to your grandparenting career, you'll learn that again.
Right, for sure. Brian, how long have we known each other? I was trying to think back the other day.
We were thinking about that, chatting about that, I think 20 plus years.
Yeah.
Easily. The first time that you and I met, we actually met in a very nice office, but it was in the top of a barn.
Mm-hmm.
And I followed you all around all the different places you've been since then.
Yeah. For those that weren't aware, I mean, back 20 some years ago, we actually we built a barn on our family farm and had our office there. That's when I first met Brian and Pat and been together with the Gareau's, goodness, for now over 20 years. It's been a fun journey and developing just great friends of ours. Brian and I get together I think every month for lunch now, and those are great conversations and learn a lot. It's been a tremendous impact on my life, and I just wanted to be able to get together with Brian and really kind of share a lot just about his personal journey and as far as just work and business and also just how he has worked on over the years of his life of really identifying this core values and how that really has guided decisions. And one of the things we always talk about with everybody is that we are on this journey to live an incredible life, and sometimes folks listen to that and they say, I don't have an incredible life. I'm pretty basic. This is regular living. Well, incredible life really means that you align your values. First of all, you know what your core values are, and then you set your goals in the short term, intermediate term, long term for your life that are based upon those core values. Then you sit down and walk through that with wise counselors. Then you set your financial resources to realize the goals you have, all the while making sure there's balance in your life and that you're living that incredible life. And so a lot of times there's distractions along the way, there's just different adjustments, and a lot of it really is kind of bringing into alignment those core values with everything else. And I thought me and Brian and I have talked a lot just about core values. And I guess maybe to set the whole thing up, Brian, can you give everyone kind of an idea as far as career or working life and when you retired and what you've been doing since then? And also kind of meld that together also as far as with family life. You also mentioned having 7 grandchildren.
Okay. So here's the 2-minute version. Most important, I was blessed for 35 years to be married to a wonderful lady who's now waiting for me in heaven. We have 3 children, and they have great spouses and 7 grandchildren, 2 girls and 5 boys. And they're very much stair-step, 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 5, and 2. So I think I did that right. And we one of our values that we talk about all the time is family, and we are a little bit unique in that we all live within 5 minutes of each other, and we have a weekly family dinner together. fact, today we were talking about tomorrow night's family dinner, but we also have our first flag football game. So we're going to have a really easy family dinner because we're all going to the family football game. So there'll be 14 of us there rooting one 5-year-old from the sidelines. I grew up 1,000 miles from here in the Adirondacks, upstate New York. Actually, we were only 7 miles from the Canadian border, and had an extended family because my grandparents lived in the original homestead, which was 1890. And then after the Korean War, my parents built another house on the same property that actually was connected to the original homestead, and had a great life, great family, one sister. And then I became the black sheep of the family. I went to college 5 hours away instead of 30 minutes away. And from there, moved to the Midwest, had a great 30-plus year career at Caterpillar. And saw things, experienced things I never thought were possible for a small town kid like me. And then, John, you helped us work out a plan, and I was fortunate enough to retire before 55, my choice. And then I couldn't turn my brain off, so I started a small consulting company. I have a hobby of writing. I won't say I'm a great writer, but I'm a wonderful storyteller, I think. And so I've written 9 books now, or co-authored 9 books, and enjoying life.
You know, I didn't ask you this, Brian. As far as writing the books, I know people, this little information, as far as the show notes, they're able to find ways to follow more of Brian as far as a podcast that you've just recently launched called Latitude, and also just as far as links on Amazon, as far as a number of the books that you have written. And you've written books that are used organizationally with businesses and not-for-profits and businesses. You've also written children's books, and I think you have a goal objective of having a children's book for each one of your grandchildren, right?
Yeah, I made a foolish public utterance. I had one grandchild that I thought it would be great if I would write a children's book for all of them. I didn't know there were going to be 7, and I didn't know they were going to be stacked up the way they are, but just released 2 more. And so that's 6 out of 7, and very, very pleased. Had some great people help me with editing and with illustrations. And most importantly, there's some good memories that I hope they take for a long, long time, but also some good principles that I think apply to anyone and any child. And 100% of the proceeds go to one of our local nonprofits, which operates a crisis nursery.
Yeah, it's just a phenomenal, tool for, I think, so many different outcomes. I mean, first of all, that each of the books that you wrote a unique book for each grandchild that really developed was a more of a character trait or a principle as far as a guiding principle of life, which really aligns with your core values. And then also the proceeds from the book go to a crisis center as far as with young moms, single moms of children. And it's even there you're living out those core principles with the proceeds from the book. And so it's a phenomenal way to really stay engaged, but to also build into the next generation, but also provide meaningful impact locally. And so phenomenal outlet there. On the business side, or organizational side, leadership side, my first book that I read of yours, was A Slice of Life. Brian, was that the first book that you wrote, or was that, was it?
It was the first book, yeah.
Yeah.
You know how much I love pizza.
Right. As far as the philosophy of that book, what prompted you to write that book?
Actually, I was asked by another author to co-write one, and it's kind of interesting. I asked him why, because he had written a number of other books, and he said, well, you when we're together, you talk about religion. And I go, I'm not sure I talk about religion. I talk about faith. So we've been friends for now 30 years, and he's now understanding the difference between practicing religion and practicing your faith. So we wrote that book together, and it's an allegory. Takes place in a small pizza shop, but really talks about all those fundamental principles that are so important in life, one of which is to be engaged, not passively, but actively engaged in your life, your family's life, your community's life, etc. So what does that mean? It means real simple. It's in your head, your heart, and your hands. And if you have discretionary time, that's where you're going to spend it. You're not going to take any ifs, ands, or buts if you're committed to it. And it's a story of a whole bunch of people in that small community Some may be true, some may not.
Yeah, I know that book I thought was just really formative with Stacy and I, as far as just in ways that we bring about around engagement, as far as an intention in the lives that we live every day. I think that for our listeners looking for maybe another a booklet through an allegory form to really kind of maybe start them thinking as far as just even daily activities in their own lives, I think it's a phenomenal resource for folks to get into it. And like I said, if you go to Amazon, you'll be able to find, all of Brian's writings and books there. So it's a wonderful place to go.
And John, just to pick up on that for a second, I think one of the reasons that you and I have talked about that, and we've talked about this subject before, is there are more and more choices in life every day. Technology is giving us more and more options. And so we have to make some decisions. There's lots of influencing of those decisions. And at the end of the day, as we've talked about before, so how do you make those decisions? Which really is the hook why we got together over 20 some years ago. And that was because you led off talking about investments with values, not how much money we were going to make, but how were we going to live out our values. And I think that that's really important because you can do a lot of transactional things. For me, and Pat, the bottom line was it wasn't about transactional things, it was about relational things.
It's interesting. I think everyone comes into a financial advisor, wealth advisory firm, and there's a money reason that initiates the conversation. And the reality is money is simply a medium, as a tool that allows us to live out our lives and the principles that we have, or it gives us the ability to live a life that's not based upon a positive core value. And so it's a choice. However, I think that if we work together to identify those core values and then say, let's start to think through practically, how do you live this out? Everyone's different. Everyone's got different values, but it's a matter of knowing that. And Brian, sticking it back right now, you recently launched a podcast called Latitude. And on the first number of episodes, you talk about a concept called return on culture. Can you that was just an interesting thing to me. I mean, hear about return on investments, hear about return on assets, but return on culture is a whole different concept. And I know that you've been I'm going to say a thought leader in that area for a while, and really bringing that idea probably a little bit more, I'm going to say, into a mainstream platform and a podcast form. Can you kind of walk through what does return on culture mean for an organization, and why is that important?
Sure, and thank you. I think the fundamental is to start with is what is culture. You have a culture in a family, you have a culture in an organization, you have a culture in a community, etc. But it's simply the accepted or perceived way we do things and why we do it. And I think that that's extremely important, and we don't spend enough time talking about the why. But having started a number of facilities and supported lots and lots of facilities around the world, literally, the bottom line is it's easy to replicate things, buildings, square footage, technology, physical layout, etc. But the heart and soul of any organization, any family, are the individuals. And so how do we ultimately get them excited? How do they feel valued? How do we create that commitment? And when you can do those things, and it's not a bunch of warm and fuzzy things, as some people would say, there's some very strategic things to do, some very important processes to do. There's some very important clarity to do. One of the things that's really important with culture is to define what accountability means. And too often, I think that has multiple definitions today. But we were able to see in the corporate world, when we spent time on culture, creating norms instead of just compliance while we were watching people or doing audits, etc., that we saw all sorts of performance improve, whether it was quality, inventory accuracy, creative ideas, etc. And was fortunate enough to get to work in the Fortune 50 company at the time, and that we actually had engagement and values and culture as a high priority, including it was one of the KPIs, and we saw some phenomenal results, and not just bigger numbers. In some cases, like living through the Great Recession, we saw some things that were very positive for the business that happened because we had spent time building relationships, treating people as valuable resources, and helping them grow and develop.
I guess the question I was still talking about that. I mean, you see it work as far as in the corporate world. Do you think that the concept or the thought of return on culture and basing the decisions you make based upon a culture, based upon the definition you gave, which is phenomenal, is that also, is that universal? Is that concept something which we apply to a not-for-profit, to a church, to even a family setting or an individual setting?
The answer to that is absolutely yes, not because a book says so, but I've seen it applied. I've worked with nonprofits, I've worked with churches, I've been around the world. People are people. And I guess one simple example that I would share with you, think about two families that you know, and one family you go visit and you're invited for dinner, and there's a certain set of behaviors that naturally happen. Kids help set the table. Mom's not the only person doing the work. Everybody is very polite, and after dinner, everybody helps clean up, and great conversation around the table. And then you have another family that you're invited to visit, and things are totally different. Absolutely. Because the culture that they've created, the accepted way that we do things is different. And I think we do that in churches, we do that in nonprofit organizations, we do it in profit organizations, we do it in China, we do it in South Africa, we do it in Canada and in Peoria, Illinois.
So when you earlier, Brian, you gave a definition of culture. Can you think through and repeat what your definition of culture was?
Sure. It's the accepted or perceived way that we do things. And why. First time I took some of my young staff overseas, and we were driving a vehicle, and their comment was, well, why is the steering wheel on this side, and why do they drive on that side of the road? It's wrong. It's like, no, that's the accepted way that we do things. In this, they're not wrong. It's just different. So I think lots of organizations, and it goes back to, again, the first time that we met, a lot of it comes down to values. We've talked about lots of different analogies for values, but there are several that stick in my mind very much. Values are a compass. They provide direction. Doesn't mean that you follow it, but they're providing the direction that you said you wanted to go. But there's still choices like we talked about before. It's also the glue. The real test of values is not in the good times, it's when the challenging decisions have to be made. And even if you have really solid values, it doesn't mean that you still don't go through tough times or have tough challenges. It just means that you go through them and execute those with different behaviors. It's also an important measurement. If you never use it as a measurement tool on how you're doing, then you have a tendency sometimes to let outside influences tell you what success looks like and what it doesn't look like. I think the other thing too is that it's like a magnet. It will definitely attract some people. They like very much the values that you're living, whether it's an organization or a family. But in some cases, magnets also repel. And some people just won't feel comfortable in that environment. Mm-hmm. One of the classics that I continually see because of, especially in the United States today with the labor market, is that when you ask people, well, tell me about Joe. I ran into Joe. He said, well, Joe's technically very, very good. He's got a skill that we definitely need. His attitude's not very good, but we're going to accept it because we need that. Well, over time, those types of things start eroding that norm that you're hoping to achieve, where people don't even think about doing things. They just do them the way that's aligned with your values and your strategy.
Mm-hmm. So it's interesting. I mentioned at the very beginning that a lot of times folks come to us for a money reason. And so let's even say that their objective is retirement planning. And so that's an end goal for a lot of people. We encourage folks to think through retirement, to kind of take the old concept of retirement, what it was, out of their mind's eye, if you will. And so not to consider that the way maybe it was viewed in previous generations, but simply to use it as a new stage of life, and that their core values should be driving what that next stage of life looks like for them. Have you found ways or practices, as we talked a lot about values, for people to actually identify and start to document what core values are to them or core principles that are guiding to them? Is there a process they can walk through that you have found, or is it just they need to sit down and think and write stuff down?
This is not an advertisement, but if you grabbed Slice of Life and you looked at the back page, there's 10 questions. They're fill-in-the-blank questions. And I feel very confident that if you answer those 10 questions honestly, you probably could figure out your values real quickly.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
That's my simple answer. And that's not an advertisement.
Yeah.
In fact, if you want to post in the show notes those questions, please feel free to.
Yep. I'll tell you that. So we'll definitely put a link in the Slice of Life, and maybe we'll post that as kind of either a teaser or some questions to ask, because I think a lot of folks really struggle a little bit on what is a core value and how do I identify the things that are most important to me. And I think some of it is just in thought. You're able to figure some things out. But I think, Brian, that'd be a useful tool to really help people as they're starting to think through this. I mean, it's been amazing to me, Brian, as you and I have been talking about core values driving the life decisions that ultimately helps us get to a better spot of selling our financial resources to accomplish those big life objectives that we have before us. That whenever we start talking about core values, all of a sudden a light starts to click on in the lives of so many people because they're able to identify what those things are to them. And for everyone, it's different, but there is some commonality there. But they identify that, and all of a sudden they recognize, man, that's where I have highest level of engagement. That's what brings me joy in life. That's what brings me contentment in life. That's where I really see the largest impact relationally with people. And I never thought about that. If we set our financial resources to live that out, well, then that means that we're not concerned about a money amount. We're not concerned about a dollar amount. Instead, we're concerned about really that true contentment, joy, and impact. And so I think that's going to be a phenomenal thing for us to link into to help give some people some real meat as far as for some personal reflection. And the one thing I appreciate, Brian, about all of your books and the way you've written them is that it's not just Ryan writing his thoughts. You put questions, you put down action points to get away so that we have application also.
Well, I like to ask questions, so part of who I am. But John, I think two things, and I think, again, we've talked about this. I think it's so important. I think it's important that if you're blessed with a spouse or a partner or significant other, et cetera, that you really talk about what those values mean. In other words, many times people use the same words, but they're using different dictionaries. Yeah. And the more specific you can be, the better. So, for example, I'll give you a simple example that happened today. I got my car serviced today, just standard maintenance. And when I picked up the car, there was a sheet of paper on the front seat. And it was a little note that said, "Hi, we looked at your car. Here's the value of it. Here's a new one that's available. And look, you can get a brand new car for $70 less per month than what you were paying before." I have no car payment. But that was the logic. A lot depends, again, on how you define values and how you define success. For our family, vehicles were very much an important piece of transportation. That's it.
Yeah.
So what did that do? It caused us to make some decisions like not having lots of debt and having car payments forever, et cetera. That's not how everybody thinks. Another simple example was a house. It's a huge expenditure. Well, for us, a safe, well-structured house wasn't the objective. It was the home. It was the home that the family created. So those are some of those clarifications that I think are so important, because we throw out words, but they don't necessarily mean the same thing to everybody. And I think especially with your spouse or your partner, it's really, really important that you have the same definitions.
Yeah. I think that's just some great insight, Brian, because we do talk a lot of the same words, but it means different things for different reasons to all of us. And so getting to go with your spouse or with your partner on that and having some great clarity, maybe always make sure you ask the next question. And so whenever it's identified as a word is used, ask the next question about what that means. And then also ask the next question, maybe how does that play out practically? Just so you can make sure that you're both are communicating the same language. You had mentioned earlier about
and never forget the that wonderful question that as kids grow up you get tired of hearing. Why? So why are we going to make that decision, or why are we considering that decision? I think that's really important, because as you know, helping us be good stewards of our resources for 20 plus years, you have short-term goals, you have medium-term goals, and you have long-term goals. And things when you start out, there are a lot of fundamental things that you're trying to accomplish. As time goes on, you find that some of those things are less important things, but perhaps making the memories is the most important thing. for us. That material things were not the high priority. It was making memories. And so, as you know, one simple example of that is we're blessed in that every year we get to spend a family vacation together.
Yeah.
We plan for that, but to spend a week together, sure, it has a few challenges with 14 people in the same, but the memories that we're making, the conversations that the grandkids are having about next year we want to do X, or watching them be afraid of the beach one year and the next year you can't get them out of the water. That's what life's about.
Yeah. You had mentioned earlier about really kind of how we have values, and that it helps whenever life does not go on the straight line. And then so there's high points in our lives and down points. Can you kind of explain a little more granular about how would having the values understood by both of all parties within the relationship that sets the culture, that how does that help make decision making, whether it be how we invest our money, whether it be the priorities that we have, whether it be our daily activities? How does having those values really kind of probably come into play a little bit more whenever life's not in a straight line and we're seeing things happen?
Well, I haven't seen anything that's a straight line very often. So probably the best example that I can give you relates to my bride getting diagnosed with pancreatic cancer and the 15 months that she battled that and what we tried to do. We sat down in the beginning, and one of the things that we talked about is how are we going to apply our values? Now, we didn't ask it in that way, but we said, what boundaries are we going to set? If we think that we want to go overseas and try something, because pancreatic cancer does not have any early warning detection. It's the third largest killer of cancers today. And there's not a ton of opportunities, especially when it's diagnosed in stage 3 or stage 4. And so we decided we were going to do A, B, C, D, and E, but one of the things we said that we collectively did not want to do is we didn't want to go, 1,000 miles away or overseas, et cetera, for the simple reason that one of our basic values is family. We wanted family to be available to not only support us, but for us to support them as we went through these challenging times. And so we didn't go to the West Coast, and we didn't go to Europe, and we didn't do some of those things. And so that was very important for us. As I said before, values, the defining moment isn't when things are good. The defining moment is when you have to make the really tough decisions.
Yeah.
So fast forward, in our research, we found an organization that we absolutely knew nothing about during this 15-month journey called PanCAN. It's the Pancreatic Cancer Action Network. And they have some phenomenal free resources they're not doing, but they're coordinating research around the world for pancreatic cancer, et cetera. And so one of the ways that I'm trying to support them is, since COVID hit several weeks after my wife went to heaven, I needed some way to grieve. And so I was able to, over a period of time with God's grace, write a book. And 100% of that goes to the Pancreatic Cancer Society for awareness and understanding, because it really is a silent killer. And as you know, it's not about getting resources and then burying them in the backyard, or as I used to do, finding a cave and putting a rock in front of it. It's how to use those wisely. And so trying to be helpful to other organizations that are making a difference is really important to us. And so again, even though I'm flying without my wing person, those values haven't changed. And so that's how we're living that out.
Yeah. And, I think hopefully everyone has been able to kind of pull away some key principles here we're talking about, which is really having those conversations just with yourself and with your spouse or partner, and really speaking the same language, identifying those core values, because that really is what should be driving your decisions. And oftentimes we get to decision points and we've not had those discussions, and then all of a sudden we're making decisions based upon whatever the feel is in the moment. That does not help us live that confident, content, joy-filled life. And so it's a matter of making sure it's proper alignment on those principles. And everybody in the show notes, you're going to be able to find links to all the information we talked about today, and some other resources on there, ways to follow more information from Brian. And Brian, maybe sometime we'll have you, sometime whenever we're out for lunch, we'll maybe set up the recorder and just kind of go on for part 2. And that might get scary hearing us order our wings or whatever, but
so John, one of the things I would say before we close about values is what I have found in 20 plus years of working in this area is that everybody says they have them, but they can point to people who aren't living them. Mm-hmm. And so that goes back to, well, how do you define it? What's the clarity? Mm-hmm. And so I'll leave you with one little simple exercise that is simple, but it's really powerful. And it has 3 words: say, do, get. So we say certain things that align, that these are critical principles, these are our values. The second part is then what behavior or activity, whether it's an investment, whether it's what we participate in, et cetera, are we specifically doing to the result or a positive perception? But then the real opportunity for growth and refinement is to do the same exercise, say, okay, we say that same thing. Now, where have we not acted out consistently, or maybe sent a mixed signal, or deviated from our plan, and we didn't get the result or the perception that we were hoping for? Sounds very simple, but if you have quality conversations, you'll find that you have many things that align, and you can get even better if you look at those things that are misaligned, because again, it helps you have a richer conversation as to why did we make that exception.
Yeah, that's priceless. Brian, thank you so much. And hey, thanks for spending time with us today. And we'll continue the conversation at a later time. And everybody, thank you also for spending time with us. Great decisions, incredible lives. And it's truly about, at this point, making sure you can define with correct definition that you're unified in what those core values are. And then from there, let's have a discussion about how to apply it. Talk to you all next time we drop the next episode.
Thank you again for listening to the Great Decisions, Incredible Lives, Retire with Intention podcast with host John Creekmur. Follow us on social media, visit our website, and join our community of like-minded individuals redefining retirement and living incredible lives. Please leave us a review and share our podcast with others who may benefit. We wish you a future filled with purpose, fulfillment, and the joy of living your incredible life in retirement.